This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed by the host of My Brain is a Wonderland are exactly that, views and opinions. This is Emily Ruth Henderson, and I'm the host of My Brain is a Wonderland, the podcast for neurodivergent women and the people who love them. In 2020, after a hellish pandemic, I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism. Surprise! Now, I am passionate about reaching other women just like me who've been pushed aside, ignored, and misdiagnosed for far too long. Every week, I discuss my experience navigating my 30s with these two life-changing diagnoses. There'll be highs, there'll be lows, and everything in between when you join me for Season 4 of My Brain is a Wonderland. All right, everybody, I am back. I am back in action. And probably if you've been watching the news or know anything about Florida right now, and if you know me, you know I live in Florida. Even people listening who are outside the US, you have probably heard of Hurricane Milton that just impacted our area. Impacted is a gentle term for what it actually frickin' did. But apologies for not getting up those extra episodes. Apologies for missing the episode last week. I was in the middle of a potentially Cat 5 hurricane. I believe it hit as a Cat 3 in the end, or maybe just shy. I think even when it hit as a Cat 3, it was like 5 miles an hour shy of a Cat 4. So it's been a lot, and I actually wanted to do an episode on the hurricanes because, first of all, hurricanes and weather in general, since moving to Florida, have become almost a special interest to me. I'm very clued up on what to look for, what this means, being informed on the models and everything, and also how evacuating affected me and what my experience was evacuating, especially as someone particularly with autism and sensory issues. So let's start at the beginning. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. If you're not from America or your geography's not good and you're at home listening to this or you have time, I suggest pulling up a map of the US, particularly the Gulf where Florida is, and there's Mexico and the water and Texas, and just having a look at that. Because I'm going to go through some stuff about why the storms hit, how they hit, and then we're going to get into my experience with them. So on August 4th, we had a tropical storm give us a little sideswipe. And so if you're looking at your map, what happened is it came out of the Caribbean, which is where most hurricanes come from. They either kind of form in the Caribbean or they come from the east across the Atlantic Ocean and then continue into the Caribbean and form either on the East Coast. Well, if they're going to come through the Caribbean, they'll go onto the west coast of Florida, which is where I am in St. Pete, Florida. And if they don't go into the Caribbean but come from the east across the Atlantic from Africa, then they will hit the east coast of Florida, where Miami is, where Orlando is. And so this one, I'm not sure if it came across from the Atlantic or formed in the Caribbean, but this tropical storm basically came up straight north off the coast of Florida. So it was basically parallel to the west coast of Florida. And by the time it hit the Panhandle, which is the horizontal part of Florida at the top, Florida's not just the long dangly part, it's the part to the left. You can tell I'm great at geography here, describing things, long dangly parts. And so it did eventually hit Florida, but it didn't hit anywhere close to where I am. It was way north of us. It hit straight up, straight into the Panhandle of Florida. By the time it hit there, it was a Cat 1. There are 5 categories for hurricanes, 1 through 5, and they are based on wind speed. So, and I'm just spitballing here. I'm going off of numbers that I may have made up. But, for example, the top end of a Cat 3 may be 140 wind speed, like the winds, how fast they're going, is 145 miles an hour. Well, once it hits 150, you're at a Cat 4. But it's only 5 miles an hour off Cat 3. Same as if you're at the top end of a Cat 3. It's pretty much no different than a Cat 4. So the numbers are important, but not if you're like on the edge of the border of a number. It's, don't think, oh, it's just a Cat 2. Well, it's actually like a mild Cat 3 at this point, or a mild Cat 4 or whatever. So this tropical storm went by us off the coast, didn't think anything of it. Tropical storms are nothing burgers. It is like in the UK, you get a bunch of rain. Like absolute nothing burger. Didn't think anything of it at all, even though it hit as a Cat 1 way north of us. When it went by us for miles, it was a tropical storm. Even a Cat 1, not worried about it. Especially if it's not hitting us direct. And from the last episode or two what happened, if you've been listening. We woke up the next morning, we had 2 leaks in our roof, and one of our fences was completely down on one side of our backyard. What ended up happening, apparently, this was just a tropical storm, but it was actually a 1 in 100-year storm based on the amount of water it dropped. So it dropped so much rain in an amount of time that, based on historical tracking of these storms, which is going to get harder to do because of climate change now, it actually dropped a huge amount of water, even though the winds weren't bad. There weren't storm surges, there weren't this, that, or the other. It dropped so much water that it forced the flashing on my roof away from the edge of the roof. So flashing is like the sealant around our chimney, the sealant where a part of your roof like bucks up against another part of your roof. The water pushed that away, and we got 2 leaks, and the rain was so heavy to force an old fence down. It was an older fence, it was wooden, it was rotted at the bottom because of how much rain we get. And so that was one. Our insurance said we're not going to cover any of it. We're not going to cover the roof because it was a maintenance issue, which maybe I should have fought it, but they still wouldn't have covered it because of us having a $6,000 deductible on our home insurance. They did offer us $3,500 for the fence that came down, but again, we have a $6,000 deductible, so we did not get any money from that, and we paid out of pocket, which I know I've been talking about. It was $2,255 or something for the fence. So $2,255, I'm ballparking that off of my memory, and it was $540 for the fixes in the roof. So just over, we're talking $3,300, which we don't need right now because chemo for my dog, am I right? So that was August 4th. It hit that night. We woke up August 5th and fence down, leaks, blah, blah, blah. Got those paid for, got those fixed. It was very annoying. We actually, I'll say, hold on that. We didn't get the fence fixed right away. That was pending for a very long time. The roof was fixed relatively quickly, but we had tarp up there with sandbags to keep out the leaks. Okay, August 5th. Let's fast forward to the end of September. And when I say the end of September, I mean like the 27th, 28th, something like that. And you track these for days, hurricanes. Hurricane Helene, not Helen, Helene with an E at the end, she decided to come through. And actually, we weren't too worried about this, but here's the thing. If you're looking at your map, this hurricane came up through the Caribbean again, and it went straight north again for the most part. It actually ended up the eye going pretty much straight through Tallahassee, which is in the panhandle of Florida. So it did another, like straight up, like that tropical storm. I've said to my husband, and we've discussed this, we pretty much always evacuate for a hurricane if it is east of the Mississippi. And because of that, and we do that because a hurricane can turn at any moment, make a very sharp turn. Last year, we evacuated for a hurricane. It was a Cat 3 or 4. We were in the eye the entire time. We evacuated 6 hours before landfall. It took a very sharp turn to the east. It went south of us, southeast of us, and 150 people died because the turn happened at 11 p.m. They were thinking they weren't going to get hit at all. And so at 11 p.m. it turned, 5 a.m. it hit, and 150 people drowned. Really tragic, awful stuff. So this was going straight up pretty much, edges east, west, a few miles as it goes, but the models are so good nowadays. And if you don't know this, it's freaking amazing. You should look it up online, the videos. They send the military in, I don't know, they're not planes. I mean, they are planes, but in very special planes that go into the center of these hurricanes and measure pressure, measure what it's doing, drops, and all this. It's insane if you see the videos. But basically, we weren't too worried about it hitting, but you never know, so we evacuated. Helene ended up being a very terrible storm for the St. Pete area. This particular storm, and if you're thinking of hurricanes, none of them are the same. You can say, the track's not the same, the strength isn't the same, but other than that, but in addition to that, they do very different things. So, like I said, with that tropical storm, one hurricane might be all wind, no rain. Another hurricane might be all rain, not much wind. Another hurricane might be storm surge and wind, or just storm surge, or whatever. So this hurricane that was off the coast, there were a couple of things that people had, a couple of trees down on the outskirts, but it was mostly all storm surge. And what storm surge is, it's when a very big storm is pushing the ocean into your town, basically. So it's pushing the water up onto the beaches, into your city, or wherever you are. And this was they were predicting a 5 to 9 foot storm surge, which is pretty big. That means if it's 9 feet, they mean it's 9 feet above sea level. So, that could flood out, that could reach your roof. This does not account for, I don't believe it accounts for high tide, so that could be another thing, and it doesn't account for waves. So if it's very rough in the ocean and you get a big freaking wave, that 9 foot storm surge could be 12 to 15 feet very quickly. It ended up being, I believe, a 6.3 foot storm surge. And they shut down the sewer treatment plant because that can only handle a 7 foot storm surge. That was down for more than a day, which meant you couldn't flush your toilet, you couldn't drink any water. You could drink water, but you couldn't put anything down the pipes. So the water was good, but you couldn't put anything down the pipes because sewage would back up into your house. Yay! In addition to that, 12 people in my city on the beaches drowned in their homes. There is a story of a man on a surfboard who was surfing in through people's windows in the middle of the night while people were screaming, and he was putting them on his surfboard and swimming out of there. He made an 86-year-old woman get on his surfboard. She was so terrified. Sorry.
Have you ever wondered if screens and digital media are reshaping children's brains? Is media use impacting our ability to think, solve problems, and form deep, lasting relationships? What does the research say? Introducing Screen Deep, the new podcast from Children and Screens, where we decode the brains and behavior of youth in the digital age. Search for Screen Deep Podcast on your favorite platform.
It's really hard when this happens to the place that you live, the place that you call home. Even when you don't know the people, it's really, really hard. And this man's a hero. He rescued 15 people. That would have been 15 more dead people. And so that was Helene. And we didn't lose power. We didn't lose internet. The water was down flushing and everything was down for a couple of days. and more of our fence came down, but it hadn't been fixed yet, so that was okay. And then they told us, the meteorologists, when Helene hit, they were doing models and said, look, in the back, it's looking like in a couple of weeks something could form. And basically what they do is they look at these disturbances in the ocean and make predictions on, well, it has a 20% chance of forming, 50%, 70%. And as it gets closer to the time, these percentages go up. And then a few days out, it became apparent that this was going to be a major hurricane again. But this time, we were in the eye. We were the direct hit. It wasn't going to swing by. It wasn't going to blow by. We were in the eye. It became a category 5 while it was in the Gulf, in the ocean. But they did say that we had a cold front around Tampa Bay. That should push it back down to at least a 4 or 3. But we didn't know if that was going to happen. The hurricane was supposed to hit Wednesday night, and we evacuated Monday. I had my husband fill up his gas, we filled up our gas can, and we got the hell out of there. We couldn't leave until later in the day because my dog has chemo on Mondays, and he cannot miss chemo. So we had to wait for that. We had a 3 p.m. appointment, but someone canceled their 11:30 because of the storm. So we were able to get in earlier and then leave earlier. We evacuated. I put quick dams down on some of the doors, not the front door, because the front door you have to go up steps. A quick dam is like a very easy modern sandbag. It absorbs a bunch of water. So I just put them in front of the doors, the back door, the side door, but not the front door because it's up steps and it has an overhang. Didn't think we were going to flood or anything. We evacuated with our dogs. The 2-hour drive took 4 hours and 40 minutes. Okay, I'm not even kidding. We are so lucky we evacuated on the Monday because by Tuesday, that same drive that was 2 hours, that took 4 hours and 40 minutes, was probably going to take 9 hours. We have friends who drove from St. Pete to Atlanta. It took 17 hours. The drive to Atlanta from here takes about 7 to 8 hours. It took 17 hours. Okay, the following day. They opened up the hard shoulder on the freeway to open up more evacuations. They did not do what they've done in the past for really horrific hurricanes. Ones that look like they're going to hit like as a Cat 5 on Miami and things like that. They will sometimes reverse traffic. So on the final day or the day of when it's about to hit, the southern route freeways, they will flip them, or for the British people, motorways, they will flip them all to go north. So you can't even take a route to go south unless you're on a back street. So we get there to our evacuation point, which is our mother-in-law's house. My mother-in-law's house, my husband's mother. It's where we almost always evacuate to. And we stayed there, and then the hurricane hit like Thursday a.m. So like Wednesday night, but in the middle of the night. So like Thursday 2 a.m. or whatever. So I stayed up with my husband because I hate night hurricanes because you do not know. You don't want to be sleeping in your bed when a tree crushes you. I want to see what's happening. So if it looks dicey, we get into the center of the house where the roofs are higher, like the trees are less likely to squish you. Did that. It was absolutely harrowing. Even where we were we got the outskirts of winds. It was absolutely horrifying. It ended up the eye shifting a little bit south again, but not far to matter. I mean, it did matter a lot. So here's the deal of this one. Remember Helene? All storm surge. It was all people getting flooded. My coworker had to wade out of her apartment chest deep with her twin babies in Helene with her teenage son. I mean, just horrific stories. This one, if this is Hurricane Milton, if Hurricane Milton had hit us north, if it had gone north of us, because of the rotation of the hurricane, we would have gotten they were saying a 12 to 15 foot storm surge, which would have been absolutely devastating, even more so after Helene, and would have reached about half a block away from our house minimum. If it went south of us, because of the way it was spinning, it would actually suck the water out of the bay, and we would have had a negative storm surge. And that's actually what ended up happening, is it went 30 miles, literally 30 miles south of us. And so it sucked out all the water. We didn't get storm surge, but we got huge amounts of flooding from rain. It dropped 16 inches of rain in, I think, a few hours. It wasn't 24 hours, just a few hours, because it only takes 4 to 8 hours to pass over. So 16 inches of rain, and then the wind. Okay, the wind was the real issue. We have friends who a tree fell on their house while they were inside. They woke up, or didn't wake up, they were awake. Their roof blew off into their yard. And if your roof blows off, the issue is that the air is now inside your house, and the pressure is that the air is in the house and can force out your walls. So really devastating stuff. And so almost everyone lost power. Everyone lost internet. They turned off the sewage treatment again. There were over 300 breaks, like cracks, in our main sewer lines in St. Pete. Over 300. So we decided to come back a day and a half after the hurricane hit because our neighbor said that they had power right next door. So they assumed that we did. And we thought, well, if we've got power, we want to go home and we want to survey the damage. We drove home. We got into our neighborhood, and our oak tree, which is the one I'm really worried about. We have an oak tree right in front of our house, and if it fell on our house, it would not be good. We have a wooden house, not a brick or concrete slab house. It's on a concrete slab foundation, but it's a wooden house. It's basically naked. It brought down immense amounts of huge branches. This thing, I mean, me and my husband don't even know if this tree's going to survive. Other than that, our house was pretty unscathed. We did have wind-driven rain in the front door of our house. So like I said, even though we had steps, I should have put a quick dam there because the wind drove the water. It was literally, we were watching our Ring camera for a couple of hours before the power went out, before the internet went out. The power didn't go out, but the rain was going sideways and it drove water in through the crack, the sealant of our door, and flooded the front part of our living room. Our door looked like something out of Twister. You know when you drive long distances and you have bugs all on your windshield? It was like that, but bits of torn leaves. Just, still, we have to wash it down. It was really crazy. And actually, our door was forced so much by the wind, it's now hard to open and close. It's pushed it, like the hinge has been pushed, so it's like wedged into the door frame now. There is also on our back corner lot, in the opposite yard, right on the corner, like against our corner and their corner, a huge tree, the tallest tree in the neighborhood that I knew would come down in a storm, and was always scared it was going to fall on our bedroom. Because it would squash our fence and fall on our bedroom. It was that close, and fall on our back porch. It actually ended up falling on the neighbor's porch, so on the neighbor's house. So it went the opposite direction. The root system that came up knocked out our neighbor's fence, part of our fence that we were able to put back up, and our neighbor's shed was completely lifted off the ground. That's another thing. I mean, people's sheds, people's roofs were like flying through the air. It was like Wizard of Oz vibes, okay? We have my boss, a tree fell on our house. Her fence is down. She has no power. She has no internet. Another coworker, her roof was in her yard. The back wall of her house got blown out. My other coworker, her roof is in her yard. Her parents lost their entire house because they're actually south of us. They live south of us where the eye hit. I live really close to our office, which is in the same city as me. They live around 30 miles away, which is where the hurricane hit. So, really devastating stuff. If you follow the news, you will have seen a lot of horrible things. My husband's an Uber driver, has been driving around, and you just see piles of people's belongings on the street. You cannot use anything after flood water has touched it. So if it has sewage in, has bacteria. So if it touches your couch, your clothes, your anything. You have to rip out all of your drywall. You have to throw out everything it's touched and rebuild your home. It's been absolutely devastating to drive around the city and see what happened. There's been free food, free water. We got free dinner yesterday. It's just been really sad to see what came of this. And we're so lucky. We're so lucky that we came out of this relatively unscathed. Oh, and news on the fence. They put the new fence in a week before Hurricane Milton hit. Yay! It didn't come down, but it is now crooked because of the hurricane, so our new fence is freaking crooked. Yeah. So, and this isn't for me, if you want to donate to the Red Cross to any kind of hurricane relief, please do. There are so many people out there right now who have nothing, who lost everything. Everything. There were people whose homes were flooded up to their roof. There are stories of people swimming out their windows, particularly with Hurricane Helene. Swimming out their windows with their pets, with their family, swimming to safety because they would have drowned. If you've seen any of the Hurricane Katrina pictures, it was similar to that, in that you had to get on your roof or in your attic or swim out your window, because you might drown in your attic. So, yeah, that's been really difficult. And, yeah, anyone listening who's in Florida or in North Carolina, oh my God, my heart goes out to you. It's been a tough couple of months, especially the last couple of weeks. And in the next week or so, another hurricane, it might form. Again, they're just tracking these disturbances. There are two. There's one in the Caribbean, and there's one in the Atlantic Ocean coming from the east. The Atlantic Ocean one looks like it probably will not hit Florida, but the one in the Caribbean, they don't know. So, just awful. But anyway, again, this was just because this is now my super hyper interest is storms and hurricanes and how they're different and what they're going to do and what we need to do. But we were really prepared this time, had all of our supplies, had charging blocks, flashlights, all the things we needed. I made my husband buy a bunch of water, which he didn't want to do. But in the end, we needed it because we couldn't even use our water. Our water we had to boil water until today. And so that's been lifted. And then we have to run our taps for every single tap for 5 minutes. Your ice maker, you got to run it, your laundry, and then you can use the water. Otherwise, if it gets in your eyes and mouth, I don't know, you could die or some crap. I don't really know. Okay, so what does that mean for me evacuating? What was the experience like and what came up for me in terms of sensory issues and evacuation issues? Honestly, it was mostly family putting pressure on me and not just me and my husband, once we had evacuated. And that pressure was socializing pressure. And that is because generally, if you're autistic, oftentimes, if you're autistic, your autism can be misdiagnosed or misthought of. That's not really a word, but you know what I mean. Misconstrued as depression. Because depression often displays as withdrawal, right? When you're depressed, you withdraw. You're very even-keeled. You remove yourself from all the things you enjoy. You don't go anywhere. You don't do anything. You might shut yourself in your room, ignore your friends, and just be like, I'm going to be depressed here. Well, when you're autistic and you have a lot of sensory overload, a lot of stuff going on, you purposely have to remove yourself. That is something that is generally seen by psychiatrists, psychologists, the whole shaboodle, that you need to remove yourself. You need to take that step back to re-energize, to find your peace again, find your quiet place before you can go back out into the world and do more things. And so, imagine you're already stressed because a hurricane is hitting. So thankfully, I have a corporate job that is very understanding and that's based in Florida, And so I work from home half the week anyway, but once a hurricane is coming, they're just like, evacuate. I don't even, fill this out, tell us where you're going, and you're good. Like, we don't even have to work. Like, there's days where you just, put your out of office on there, and you just say, hey, hurricane's coming, contact someone else, because it ain't going to be me. And so I didn't have to worry about that too much. And then my husband's an Uber driver. He has lost a week of pay from not working, right? But he doesn't have someone saying, you have to come back to work, or if not, you're fired. So that's really stressful. Then evacuating with 2 dogs, one of which does not travel well. She's very anxious. We say she's very much like me. Me and the female dog are the same. Very anxious. We don't like to evacuate. We don't like to, do new scary things. That's new and scary. So, though we've been evacuating a lot lately, we evacuated twice in 2 weeks. So they've really gotten used to their evacuation home, which we've evacuated every year, the last 3 years. But once a year is not enough. But twice in 2 weeks, well, they'll soon get used to that place. So we're driving. We don't take our usual route because it's so clogged. So we get off the usual route. We go a route we don't usually take. They took tolls down. That's another thing when hurricanes are hitting. Tolls just go away, so you don't feel the pressure of money. You can just take whatever route you need. It was still over double the time to get there, so it was a very stressful drive, right? It wasn't like, okay, sweet, 2 hours up here, boom, freeway, done. It wasn't. It was back streets. It was, it was just a lot. And then we get there, and then you're worried about your home. I'm watching the Ring camera. We're trying to see, has it hit yet? You're watching the news. Okay, did it edge north? Did it edge south? Has it gone east? Has it gone west? Is it a Cat 5? Is it a Cat 3? What are we dealing with? Because a Cat 5, probably a Cat 5 direct hitting Tampa Bay would have brought our oak tree down, and you just pray that the oak tree falls into the street and not on your house. You pray that your entire fence doesn't come down. You pray that your roof is still there, doesn't get pulled off. And I'm talking Wizard of Oz pulled off, not just lifted off of your house, guys. That your windows don't get blown in, that they don't get smashed from trees and stuff. It was so stressful. Then you go through, the hurricane is hitting now. And we were staying with my mother-in-law. She's who we evacuate to, like I said. So we see her every time we evacuate. We're with her all the time. Other family members want to, quote unquote, hang out during these times. So they want to either come over and hang out, or they want us to go to their house, leave the dogs with my mother-in-law, and go hang out with them. 2 things. I am not in a hanging out mood when I am going through this type of situation. I'm not, I'm very anxious. I'm very focused. Neurodivergent people can get that one track, that one lane of focus. That's it. It's hurricane. That's all I'm focused on. I am not focused on anything else. I don't care what book you're reading, what's happening in your life. I'm focused on the hurricane that is about to wreck my world right now. And then the other thing is, because the evacuation in and of itself is so stressful, and you spend days prior to that preparing. So you're clearing out your gutter. You're doing a lot of manual labor. There's a lot of manual labor leading up to a hurricane hitting. In the days as before, when you know it's coming, you're cleaning out your gutters. You're getting on the roof. You're chopping down your trees, chopping them up, branches that are overhanging. You're cleaning up your yard. It's a lot of work. And I need that time, like I said at the beginning, being autistic, I need to remove myself. I need to go into my little cocoon and have like a cocoon. Honestly, when I said that, wow, go into my cocoon and regrow myself. I need to grow back into the butterfly I was. And I can't do that if I'm relentlessly in contact with other people socially, relentlessly having to talk. Even I love my mother-in-law. We're so comfortable around each other, but I can't just come out of my room and ignore her, right? Like, me and my husband have this great relationship because we've been together for so long and we both have sensory issues where, you know, we just won't talk for hours sometimes. You know, a lot of people in long-term relationships listening, I'm sure, can relate to that. You can just be there for hours not talking. In the morning, not talking. Just having breakfast. Don't need to talk. I don't need to hear your voice. Please don't. I don't want to hear your voice. Well, I have to talk to my mother-in-law, and she's very mild, not loud, very gentle, love her, but it's still a person. Then you add on, okay, the family's coming over. Who's that? It could be the father-in-law. It could be my sister-in-law. It could be my sister-in-law, her husband, and 4 kids. It could be, like, I can't do it. And there is a little bit, it seems like, an offense taken because it's seen as, well, this is an opportunity for family to get together, and why don't you want to? And in that moment, I just have to be selfish. I just have to say, because after this, I have to go home, deal with potentially no power, definitely no internet, no water, no access to groceries. The stores are clean, dudes. Like, there's no water, there's no toilet paper, there's no food. I may have to go home and our roof is ripped off. A tree fell on our house. We might have to live in a hotel after this, okay? Not only that, my coworkers, my friends might be going through this. I don't have the mental bandwidth with autism to give you what you need when I am going through something. And the thing is, I don't ask them. I'm not like, hey, I need this from you. I'm very much like, I'm in my cocoon. I got everything I need. I don't need stuff from you, but all they want is stuff from me that I cannot give them. And that was really difficult because it did seem like, because we'd evacuated twice in 2 weeks and we hadn't really hung out with family, it seemed like some people were maybe offended and or upset that the second time we evacuated, we didn't kind of hang out with them either. I say kind of, we didn't at all. We saw them briefly, the family I'm thinking about, the first time we evacuated for about 10 minutes, and they left. And then when we evacuated again, they were like, oh, you could come over. And I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I was just like, I really don't want to, dude. Like, this is not chill hangout time. Like, this is stress, freak out, need to be alone, need to recharge time. And I just don't think they get that this is a really big deal. And I think it's a big deal even for neurotypicals and maybe people who are outgoing, you know, who feed off socializing and don't get depleted by it. Maybe if they evacuated, they would want to see family for that emotional comfort. To me, it's a drain. To me, it's like, you want to see me, you want my emotions. Like, I can show up and just be like a dead body, like not really talk, sit there. They wouldn't like that though. They're saying, oh, we want to see you, but they don't want to see me how I am. They want me to show up for them. They want me to be there so that I can hang out with them, be nice to them, have experiences with them. Whereas if I'm going to show up, I just want to be like sitting there and just like giving one-word answers like, yeah, I'm good. Okay. You know, like zoning out kind of thing. If you really just want to see me to see that I'm okay, then that should be okay. But it's not okay. They want us to engage. They want us to socialize. They want us to be in the mix. And I just can't do it. So I don't really know the resolution to that. I think part of it is they feel like it's them, and it's not them, it's everybody. I don't want to be around anybody. It's not you, it's people. Like, it's not you specifically, it's just human beings in general. and experiences in general. Like, this is a big experience and I just need to be away from experiences and people and just be alone. And so that was really difficult because it's fine. Evacuating was fine. We're in a new home of my mother-in-law's, which is smaller. The dogs find it easier. I find it less stressful. There's less doors for the dogs to get out of, all the things, blah, blah, blah. Less windows for trees to fall on, blah, blah, blah. But it's stressful when people are trying to make demands of you without, it's the whole thing. You just talk to them and just say, hey, and I said, look, this has been a really stressful couple of days. When I was asked, like, oh, come over, I was like, this has been a really stressful couple of days. But also, like, can't you just, like, tell that? Like, can't you just have innate empathy that when you look at what we've had to do, evacuate twice in 2 weeks, lost money, you heard me crying earlier, just gone through these awful things with friends and seeing your city and just the panic that your home might be gone. It just, like, let me be, please let me be. And I just don't know how to say that because I don't think I would, I don't know. I think also sometimes, and I'm not saying this is my family that I'm talking about, but because maybe it's me, bringing up, hey, my autism, do people see that as like an excuse? Because it's not an excuse, it's the reason. It's not an excuse. I'm not trying to get out of hanging out with you by saying I have autism. I'm telling you, I have autism, so I cannot do this. This is the reason I cannot. And I think people just kind of, it's like, we'll push through it. It's like, well, no, I don't want to. 2, I'm not going to. And 3, do you care about me at all? Because here's what would happen. If I had pushed, quote unquote, pushed through to go socialize and stuff, I wouldn't have anything left in the tank to drive back home and deal with everything we had to deal with. Like, my job is on fire right now. And I don't mean that in a good way. I mean it in a way that our entire department that's in St. Pete, Florida, almost all of them evacuated to cities outside of Florida or like miles away. The ones that didn't have no power, no internet, no water. People haven't even come back from some of their evacuation places. Like, it's a lot. And I feel for anyone out there who feels that pressure to show up for others when, quite frankly, sometimes they don't show up for you. Like, I don't have the space to accommodate every single person and every single person's needs in my life. I just don't. And so that was my experience evacuating for this hurricane. I hope to God, I said to my mother and father-in-law, like, look, loved seeing you, but really don't want to see you again in 2 more weeks. This would be 3 evacuations in 5 to 6 weeks. So I'll let you know, but hopefully that does not happen. I'm going to record a few more episodes this week. I am working from home this entire week because of the hurricane. They've allowed us that, fortunately. I won't be recording during the day, during work, obviously, but it just gives me that mental space that I didn't have to go to work because going to work is a whole other thing. Just that I can be in my own home, and then I'll record some episodes in the evening, edit them, and hopefully get some up either this week or just pre-record a couple of episodes so at least I know I have some up. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Again, this is not a call out for donating to my dogs campaign. If you have any money, anything at all, please donate to Florida and North Carolina's hurricane efforts and disaster relief. It's been awful. So thank you so much for listening. And if I don't put out another episode this week, I will see you again next week for My Brain is a Wonderland Season 4. Bye-bye.